Ian, can you go live and just put in the chat box or on our messaging now?
No, there's a live team.
Okay, John, I can confirm that we are live, and can I ask people if they're not speaking to just turn their microphones off. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Helen, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Cornwall SACRE. This is a virtual meeting of Cornwall Council SACRE. Before consideration of today's business, I'm required to outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When speaking, members of the SACRE, they may wish to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I will adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I will remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic Officer, Helen, will advise you. Votes will be taken by roll call and the result announced by Helen. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that committee members, SACRE members who wish to speak on an item should indicate either by raising your hand or, since we're not using the chat box, we don't need to type an X, so use the raise your hand function. So that's the end of the description of the protocol. And before we start today's business, I will ask Helen, as the Democratic Services Officer, to confirm members and officers' attendance. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chairman. If I just read out, there's several people here. I'll just read out for the purposes of the live stream who is in attendance. So we've got Linda Sanders. This is Group A, the church representatives. We've got Linda Sanders representing Baptist churches, Patrick Butley representing independent churches, Elizabeth Fuchs-Matson representing the Methodist Church, our Chairman John Keast, Methodist Church, Dr. Rafai from the Muslim community, Maggie Thompson from the Roman Catholic Church, Sandy Easterbrook from the Roman Catholic Church, and Eve Salthouse, who is our pagan representative. From Group B, our Church of England representatives, we have Anna Corbett, Katie Fitzsimmons, and Felicity Henchley from the Diocese Board of Education. We have our teacher representatives present, David Barton, who is representing the Association of School and College Lecturers and also the National Association of Secondary Head Teachers. We have Teresa Mills representing Cornwall Association of Primary Head Teachers and the National Association of Head Teachers. We have Greg Parrick from the National Association of the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education. And we have Michael Heron from the National Education Union, and a new member today, Angie Rutter from the Voice Union. We have two local authority representatives, Loveday Jenkin and Pete Mitchell, both Cornwall councillors. We have co-opted members.
And Mike Thomas as well.
Oh, hello, Mike. Sorry,
Sorry, I was on the telephone call. I do apologise.
No, that's fine. And we also have Councillor Mike Thomas. Our co-opted members present, we have Dr. Rita Stevens from Cornwall Faith Forum and Joe Brooke representing Humanists. We're also welcoming and due to vote in Jeff Smith, who's a new co-opted member representing the Baha'i Faith. And we have officers present. Graham Plunkett, who is our officer for SACRE. We have then our two consultants, Clifflyn Banfield and Linda Rudge, and my name is Helen Snell, Democratic Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. In addition to Helen's welcome, I would like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Cornwall SACRE. It's so good that there are 27 of us present today, and I hope you will find the meeting a good one. A particular welcome to those of you who have come to a Cornwall SACRE meeting for the first time, and we hope that you will soon get to know everybody and settle into the work we do. So we're now coming to the agenda, which Helen has sent out to us all, and everything so far has been preliminary. We now come to item 1 on the agenda, which is the apologies for absence. So Helen, would you tell us if there are any, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've received apologies from Bonnie Rockley and Sue Nicholas.
Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. If anyone has to declare an interest in the sense in which it was referred to in the protocol that I read earlier, would you please speak now? Well, I heard nothing come through on my machine here at home, so I'm assuming that there are no interests of that kind to be declared today. Thank you. Which brings us to item 3, and that is the minutes of our last meeting. And they were sent out to you with the papers. We're looking at page 1 through to page 4 on our agenda papers. And I have to ask you first if anyone has got an issue of accuracy to raise. If you have, would you please indicate? I think, is that, I can't quite see who that is that's got a hand up. Is it Councillor Buck?
It's Maggie Thompson.
Maggie, sorry, I can only see the top of your head.
Yeah.
That's better. That's better. Yes, thank you very much.
You're muted. You're muted.
You're muted, I'm afraid. Can you unmute yourself, please? That's better.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
It's at the top of page 4. I think it should read original launches. I think it's just a typo.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't think there is such a word as launches, is there?
No.
No, that escaped both the spell checker and us.
Sorry about that.
Well done for spotting it. Thank you very much indeed, Maggie. So that's one change to make. Has anyone else got a change that they wish to make to the minutes of our last meeting? If you do, would you please speak?
I propose we accept the minutes, John.
Is that Councillor Thomas?
There's Councillor Mike Thomas, yeah. Propose we accept
Thank
the
you very
minutes,
much.
Chair.
So it has been proposed. Welcome, Mike. Thank you for your proposal. Is anyone wishing to second the proposal?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Mitchell is seconding the proposal. So we need to move to a vote, Helen.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, bear with me while we go through all these. I'm going to ask you all to vote for, against or abstain, and I will do it by groups and announce the result after each group. So, Linda Sanders. Linda Sanders.
Sorry, 4.
Thank you. And Patrick Buckley.
4.
Thank you. And Elizabeth Folks-Matson.
Hi, 4. It's Elizabeth Folks. Yeah.
Folks-Math. Thank you. And John Keast.
4.
Thank you. And Dr. Rafai.
4.
Thank you. And Maggie Thompson.
4.
Thank you. And Sandy Easterbrook.
4.
and Eve Salthouse.
4.
That's all agreed from Group A. And Group B, Anna Corbett.
4.
Thank you. Katie Fitzsimmons.
4.
Thank you. And Felicity Henchley.
4.
Thank you. That's all agreed from Group B. And then Group C, David Barton.
4.
Thank you. Teresa Mills.
4.
Thank you. Greg Perrick. Greg, are you there?
4.
Thank you. And Mike Heron.
I wasn't present at the meeting, so I don't vote for it.
Right, okay. That's all agreed from Group C. And Group D, our local authority representatives, Councillor Jenkin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Right, that's all Group D approved, so that's all carried. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Helen. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry it's such a cumbersome way of voting, but that's the way it is. So just have to be patient. Item 4 is to take questions from the public or statements from the public to the SACRE. I'm not aware that any have been requested. Helen, have we had any requests for a statement or a question?
No requests, Chairman, no.
Thank you very much. We move on to item 5, which is a membership report, and I'm going back to Helen for her update of the membership.
Thank you, Chairman. Since our last meeting in December, to Group D, we have had Patrick Buckley re-elected for a 4-year period, Dr. Rafai re-elected for a 4-year period. The vacancies are as per on the agenda, and they still remain as vacant. I've not had any, despite chasing, not had any new nominations. Group B remains the same. Group C, David Barton and Greg Perrick have been David for the Cornwall Association of Secondary Head Teachers and Greg for SACRE have entered into a new 4-year period. We have also welcomed Angie Rutter from the Boyce Union, now commencing her 4-year period. There's 2 vacancies which remain as per the agenda, which have both been chased last month and still not heard anything. Group D is as per the agenda. In Group C, co-opted members, we have had Philomena Clifford from Bahai step down, and we'd like to welcome Jeff Smith. So we need to, if I go over to you, John, to just ask Jeff if he can introduce himself, and John, if you could welcome him, and then we can go to a vote to vote him in as a co-opted member, if everyone agrees.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Well, it's a pleasure to welcome Greg as a potential co-optee to the Cornwall SACRE. Greg was a member of the SACRE some years ago.
John.
I will ask him just to introduce himself briefly in a moment. But I have a very distinct and very pleasant memory of Greg's contribution to the Cornwall SACRE back in, well, a long time ago, and it's good to see him again. So, Greg, would you just like to very briefly say who you are, and then we will move to a vote on your co-option as a representative of the Baha'i faith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So it's Jeff, John. It's Jeff. My name's Jeff. So yeah, it was a long time ago, but.
Sorry, did I not say Jeff? I meant to say Jeff.
I was renamed Greg, which is.
Oh, sorry.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Apologies.
Yes. Well, yeah. So I'm Jeff Smith, a member of the Baha'i faith, and for many years, and I recently retired as the head teacher of Key Helen School. I've worked in primary schools in Cornwall for 30 years now, mainly at Key Helen School as a head teacher, at Ludgvan School as a class teacher, and also did a stint at Portleven School as well as the stand-in head. And I was on the SACRE many years ago when I was a class teacher, and have a little more time there. So I'm keen to be able to do whatever I can to support RE in schools. Hopefully, I can contribute from the point of view of having had classroom experience and a little bit of some understanding of the nature of education and RE in schools. So, if you're willing to have me, I'd be very happy to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you, Jeff, and for that little resume. And we therefore need to move to a vote on the co-option of Jeff in place of Philomena. And Helen, therefore, I'm afraid I've got to ask you to go through the roll call again for the voting.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is to vote Jeff Smith in as a co-opted member. So Linda Sanders? 4. Thank you. Patrick Buckley?
4.
Thank you. Elizabeth Folkes-Matson?
4.
Thank you. John Keast?
4.
Thank you. Dr. Rafai?
4.
Thank you. Maggie Thompson?
4.
Thank you. Sandy Easterbrook?
4.
Thank you. And Eve Salthouse?
4.
That's all agreed for Group A. And Group B, Anna Corbett?
4.
Thank you. Katie Fitzsimmons?
4.
Thank you. And Felicity Henchley?
4.
It's all agreed. Group B. Group C, David Barton?
4.
Thank you. Teresa Mills?
4.
Greg Parrick?
4.
Thank you. And Mike Heron?
4.
Thank you. That's Group C, all agreed. Group D, Councillor Jenkin?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
4.
Councillor Mitchell?
4.
Thank you. That's all agreed and carried. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Just a very brief reminder that although we are having votes by roll call under the constitution of a SACRE, and this applies to all SACREs throughout the land, voting is really by committee. So each committee has a single vote, and therefore, although we're doing it by name, unless there is a majority within a particular committee for or against, the votes have to be tallied up within the committee to get a committee vote. So I just want you not to be under the illusion that you're voting as an individual. You're only voting as an individual within your committee, and it is the committee's weight of vote that actually counts towards the decision making in a SACRE. I did not invent this system, but that is the one that we are constituted with. So lots of procedural things that we've done, normal kind of business. Now we move to the more substantive issues of the work of SACRE, and item 6 is the first of those, and this is where we come to the budget. We have a report which Graham has written for us, and Graham, I'm going to ask if you will speak to your report, but I do thank you in advance for it.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to go through. I won't read the whole thing to you, obviously, but I'll just go through a few key points, if that's okay. Firstly, section 1, the executive summary, that summarises the situation with regards to the consultancy situation for this last year, which has been Linda and Cliffy, obviously, the 2 consultants, and also the allocation that we had for this past financial year, which was £15,000. That was 1.57% of the school effectiveness budget. I'll come back to that in a minute with regards to the likely budget for next year, which is not in the report, but I found out since I wrote it. Section 2, purpose of the report, just goes through to point out that the report is linked to obviously the financial year. We're coming to the end of the financial year. We're looking ahead, obviously, with the action plan report as well. There's some figures in there just explaining what we spent on consultant time, that there's £800 also for contingencies, which we will probably need. I'll tell you about that in a minute. That we have funding which is held for us, the LTLRE funding, hold the funding for us, £12,852. And there is also a contingency fund, which, despite us voting to pull it back, as far as I'm aware, it still hasn't been invoiced for. I don't know whether David can confirm that or not, David Barton, but as far as I'm aware, although I've asked for it to happen, financial processes grind so slowly, I don't think the invoice has been issued yet.
It certainly hadn't been on Thursday, Graham, last week. I haven't spoken to the Treasurer since, but it hadn't
been. I will get that expedited then, because it would be good to get that back in where we can see it, if you like. See what I mean?
It's there.
It's there. Good. I'm glad it's still there. Item 6. Sorry, on the number 6, financial implications. Obviously, we need the budget approving each year, and as far as I'm concerned at the moment, that £12,852, this is moving on now to the options, which is heading 10, options available, that we wouldn't need to draw that money down this year again, or this year coming, in fact. That's obviously to be decided. And so my recommendation would be that that money's left where it is. Table 11 gives you the current balance, as it was at 31st of January when the report was written, and the forecast position for the end of the financial year on 31st of March. So we got £15,000 from Education Services. The forecast at the time of writing was for an underspend of £4,000. However, since then, we've been billed for services for statistics to go into the annual report, and we also will need to spend the contingency fund for consultants because of the hours they put in. So the final figure will be more like £2,500 underspend once we've factored those two in. So it could be about £1,600 in total. So we'll probably hit year end with an underspend of about £2,500. Now, the reason that's relevant is because I've had indicative figures. I got them this week. So again, they were too late to put in the report. Indicative figures for the 21-22 financial year. And what I've been told is we're likely to be allocated. I don't know what the mechanisms are for, appealing this or for debating it or whatever, but I've been told we're likely to get £11,760. Now that is actually percentage-wise an increase. It's actually 2% of the budget, but obviously the budget has been reduced, so as a result it's less than the 15,000 we had last year. So I've now gone back to the finance and said, in that case, will it be possible for us to roll over the underspend? Apparently in previous years any underspends have been clawed back, and that was the context around that money that is with cash at the moment. It was an underspend that was, I think Tim Osborne in his time as advising the SACRE committee suggested that money be put somewhere to retain it. I'm sure that was what was said at the last meeting. Yeah. So I've gone the more official route and gone to my line manager and said, in the circumstances of a projected cut in the budget for the coming year, could we hang on to any underspend from this year? I have not had a response yet, but I will push for that. If that was to happen, we'd be more or less stand on in terms of funding for next year, and we'd still have the LTLRE money sitting as a reserve. Okay. So coming towards the end there, in terms of contingency and so forth, as you can see, we underspent on supplies and services, Consultants has come in on as it should have done really, and there's other bits and pieces there that sort of come out as underspent, largely due to COVID circumstances. I suspect we haven't had the meetings, we haven't been physically travelling. Understandable that there have been some savings there. Is that okay? I think I've told you everything you need to know there, as far as I can. Just the timing of this meeting fell a bit awkwardly with regards to the end of the financial year, in a sense. Yeah. We're not there. We haven't set a budget yet for next year, and we haven't quite got to the end of this year's budget. So we're sort of in a bit of a no man's land.
Funny time of the year. Thank you very much for your report, and I'll find out if there are any questions to you from members of SACRE in a moment. But I would like to underline something you said, which is that, of course, it was nothing like a normal year, and therefore budgets of all kinds are peculiar as we come to the end of year accounts in all sorts of organisations. Just one comment from me on the potential for the underspend. If we do have an underspend of 2,500 and are not allowed to carry that over to next year, which would almost bring us up to a normal budget of 15,000 if we were, one possibility is that we could take advantage of purchasing in advance some training for teachers with this year's money while we have it, and that would then count towards the activity of SACRE next year, even though it wouldn't be part of the budget of next year. So that's one possibility we might want to consider. But I'm denying members of SACRE a chance to ask questions or make any comments on Graham's budget report. So open to any of you now who wish to ask Graham a question or make a statement. Loveday, I think, would you like to go first?
I always seem to end up going first. The biggest thing, obviously, that I read when looking at the report was there was no indication of what Cornwall Council was putting into the whole pot. So, useful that you've been told something.
Yeah.
I have to point out, Chair, that the 15,000 was a cut on the previous amount that we had before that. So, and the 10,000 was a cut on the 15,000. So even if it goes up to 11,000, it's still a cut over the last few years, significant cut over the last few years. And we do seem to be sort of muddying the waters about how much is paying for consultants and what for, because the actual managing of SACRE is a significant piece of work, and that needs to be accounted for within the budget. So we need to be aware of how much, in terms of report writing and agenda setting and all those sorts of things we're asking consultants to do, or whether that's being delivered from internal sources, because it hasn't been over the last few years delivered from internal sources. So I'm not sure whether Graham has got any answers to that, but it's interesting that we haven't really got an increase. It's a decrease.
No. I hear what you're saying. I think I'll need to go back over previous budget reports, because this is my first year, as you know, doing this. I need to go back over the previous year's budgets to look at the funding over time, and then we could put an argument together, presumably, which I can only put forward to the Education SLT and Directorate Leadership Group team, I suspect, to argue our case. One of the issues is going to be, I think you're quite right about consultant time. I'm sure they'd be able to speak to this much better than I can. How much time spent writing reports, and how much time is spent doing the role of monitoring the syllabus, monitoring quality of school assemblies, etc. But we have stated that going forward, that is going to be a higher priority for us, and that we're also going to, in the SEC team, School Effectiveness Cornwall team, when we look at our criteria for monitoring visits to schools, to make sure there's an explicit onus on officers going into schools to do monitoring, to check on those statutory aspects, which
thank you very much.
Which would up the, if you like, the monitoring vigilance role considerably. Yeah, I can't comment on the specific time in terms of report writing, etc. One thing I would like to do though is bring the data analysis back in house.
Well, that was the other point I was going to make, actually, Graham. There's a cost to the Jason Herr or whoever doing the data analysis and writing the annual report. And if that's done in house, then that doesn't require external funds. But we need to know that, because otherwise we don't want to be trying to do data analysis and writing an annual report and not having any internal support for that.
Thank you very much.
We have a very good stats team within, our stats team within the council could easily do that work.
And if I can make the point, Chair, that when we had a half-time advisor who was doing everything, that was significantly more money than even the 18,000 that has now been reduced down to 11,000. So it would be useful, Graham, for you to go back through and see decline over time.
Yeah, thank you. Mike Thomas, you've been very patient. Would you like to make your point?
Thank you, John. I think Loveday has really covered the area fully and raised issues that I wasn't actually fully aware of. And thank you very much, Loveday, for saying those points. I was just sort of going to say the proposal you suggested, I'm just wondering whether that actually would be possible, because it's not on the agenda, whether Helen can actually verify that, because that would seem to be a sensible way of moving, but I don't think it would be legal.
Well, can I just defend my suggestion against illegality? I think it will be covered by the fact that we've already approved the SACRE action plan, and it would be to pay for some of the training that we've already committed ourselves to in the current action plan. So it would not be a new item of expenditure. It will be simply increasing the capacity of the action plan we've already agreed.
Well, if that's the way ahead and you're proposing that, I'd be happy to second it.
We don't know if it's available yet, though, until Graham has found out if it's...
Well, we have to have something down in case it is. So if it is available, then at least there is the paperwork to track that. Indeed
so. So we'll vote on that when we come to the recommendations of Graham's report. I can't see anyone else's hand up at the moment. Let me therefore just add a comment of my own. The budget for next year of £11,760, which Graham mentioned, I think he said was around about 2% of the school effectiveness budget, which is a higher percentage than the budget of 15,000 which we had this year, because of the proportion of the school effectiveness budget. This question of how much SACREs are funded by the local authority to do their work is a national issue, and it might well be that Linda would like to comment on this as the chair of the National Association of SACREs. A national issue because there are some SACREs in the country who are very underfunded, much less than we are, and the matter has been taken up with the Department for Education. Linda, I don't know whether you want to add something to that. It was referred to at the South West SACREs conference yesterday, which I will report on later on.
Thank you, John. I wasn't at the conference, so I didn't hear what was said. I can't speak as the chair of NASACRE straight off the bat like that. Okay, but I can speak as your consultant. That percentage of the budget appears to be higher than some, you're quite right, but the points councillors have made about making sure that the costs of democratic services are included in any budget is really important. The SACRE might like to know, and I think you probably already know, that there was a freedom of information request sent into the local authority from the National Association of SACREs last year, and Cornwall responded. So it may be at some point at a future meeting you'd like to see that data from the local authority. That's something to note for a future meeting. Thank you. John, I can't hear you. You're muted.
I beg your pardon. Thank you very much, Linda. I think the fact that we are supported by the authority in other ways than just the budget is a very important point to note. And just to clarify, at the Southwest SACRE's conference yesterday, Claire Clinton, who was presenting one of the workshops, said that she had a conversation to be had with the department about the funding of SACREs nationally. So this might well come up again as an issue come our way as it becomes a national issue in the year to come.
Thank you. I will be at that meeting on Thursday, John. So
you will. Good. It's nice to know that someone from Cornwall will be there as well as others. So thank you to all those who've participated in that discussion of the budget. So I'd like, if I may, to move to the recommendations that Graham has made in his budget report on page 6. There are 3 recommendations, but we might want to include one to use our underspend, if it is available, to support the SACRE action plan, and in particular to sorry, my cup of tea has just arrived.
Sorry, it's a bit late.
To support the training of teachers in our agreed syllabus. So Graham, recommendation 1, this is that we use, David Barton, you'd like to speak, please.
John, it's on the point you've just made. I think we need to be very clear, and Mike Thomas is absolutely right. There is going to be that need for the training because of the disruption we've had over the last 12 months, which means no face-to-face training obviously took place. Online training has been available. But this training isn't really going to be wanted until much later in the summer term, or maybe even the autumn term, simply because of the circumstances that schools, primary and secondary, are facing during the next 12 weeks with secondaries with assessment and grading and all the rest of it, and just simply getting all the children back into school. So nobody's going to be wanting any training this side of Easter, and probably not until May half term, if I'm honest. So we need to be pragmatic about it, and it's a strong argument for being allowed to carry the funding over that Graham, I know, is going to be putting.
That would be by far the best way of doing it. But if that's not possible, rather than lose that underspend, I think RE Today Services are proposing that we buy training for our agreed syllabus to take place at a later date when teachers are in a position to take advantage of it. So we'll be paying for that training, which is something which our action plan already allows for.
No, that's great. Thank you, John.
So with that, I hope being understood, perhaps we could turn to recommendation 1 of Graham's report to ensure that allocated funds for 2020 to 2021 are utilised in line with the identified areas agreed within the current SACRE development plan and any subsequent revisions made to it. And now I think that allows us to spend the money that we have until the end of March on training if it's not going to be carried over. If it's going to be carried over, we don't need to do that in that particular way. But it seems to me that that recommendation is sufficiently widely worded to allow us to do either the carryover or to buy the training before this financial year runs out, because it's something which our current SACRE development plan allows us to do. So I would like to ask you to vote on that recommendation, please. And maybe if our Democratic Services Officer will allow us, can we take recommendation 2 as well, Helen, so that we don't have to have 2 roll calls?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, what is general practice, and if we can do, it's actually vote on all 3 recommendations. We just vote like per report. So if we can, is that okay to include recommendation 3 in our roll call?
So I was about to say that. So recommendation 3, something which has not been specifically mentioned, but this is that
our consultants' time in office comes to an end at the end of March, and we have to reappoint or seek new expressions of interest as to who would like to be our SACRE consultants after the 31st of March. And recommendation 3 is that we agree to seek expressions of interest so that we have people working for us in the year to come. David Barton?
By when are we looking to seek those expressions of interest? I'm just not quite sure of the timeline when these things happen, John.
Well, what has happened in the past is that when April has come and our consultants are no longer technically working for us, we then send out invitations to express an interest, and we appoint as soon as possible after that within the local authorities system for doing so.
Thank you.
So 3 recommendations, and I invite Helen then to do a roll call of voting in favour or not for all 3 at one block. Oh, Linda, I think you have a point to make. I see your hand is up.
For the minutes, I think.
Is it Loveday? Linda first, then Loveday.
I think it's just for the minutes, because the point 2, recommendation 2, I'm sorry I didn't spot this before, Graham. LTLRE funding retained for SACRE by the diocese should not be drawn down this financial year. By the diocese, we mean the diocese of Exeter.
Diocese of Exeter, yes.
As we're in, yes.
It is the Diocese of Exeter, yes. Yeah. So thank you for that clarification. Loveday?
Yeah, just clarifying the numbers, because you talked about 1, 2 and 3, but we've got 3 recommendations already and then the additional one. So just to clarify that there's 4 recommendations.
Well, I was arguing, Loveday, that the recommendation that we use the underspend to buy training as per our existing SACRE development plan is actually allowed for in recommendation 1.
Right, yeah.
And therefore we wouldn't need the 4th recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Helen, would you like to take us through the voting process, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So we're voting for the recommendations as laid out on page 6 of the report. We're adding the words of Exeter to the Diocese of Exeter on recommendation 2. So all 3 recommendations. So Group A, Linda Sanders.
4.
Thank you. And Patrick Buckley.
4.
Thank you. Elizabeth Folkes-Matson.
4.
Thank you. John Keast.
4.
Thank you. Dr. Rafai.
4.
Thank you. Maggie Thompson.
4.
Thank you. Sandy Easterbrook.
4.
Thank you. And Eve Salthouse.
4.
Thank you. So that's Group A voting for. Group B, Anna Corbett.
4.
Thank you. Katie Fitzsimmons.
4.
Thank you. And Felicity Henchley. Felicity.
4.
Great. Thank you. That's Group B voting for. And Group C, David Barton.
4.
Teresa Mills.
4.
Thank you. Greg Parrick.
4.
And Mike Heron.
4.
Thank you. That's Group C voting for. And Group D, Councillor Jenkin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
4.
And Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Thank you. That's Group D all voting for. So that's recommendations all carried, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, everyone. So we're on to the next item, item 7, which is the biggest item of our agenda, because this is where we look at the work of SACRE in terms of the action plan that we have agreed, and that's what you have in front of you on what was sent out as a supplementary paper. So it's a different set of agenda numbers. So it's agenda item number 7, but we're back to page 1, where there is an executive summary. This report has been put together by our very hard-working consultants, Cliff Lynn and Linda,
and I'm going to hand over to them in just a moment to speak to this report, take us through it, and lead us to the recommendations that they make in it. But before I do that, and whilst I've got everybody's attention, I have to tell you that Linda has decided not to respond to any expression of interest in carrying on as one of our consultants, and therefore I want to thank you, Linda, for everything you've done for us this year, the previous year, and the other times when you've been working for us. I know we shan't be losing you from the county, and I would be very surprised and disappointed if we didn't see you again at a SACRE meeting. But I want to officially at this point thank you for all that you've done in helping us to move our SACRE development plan on. Anyway, it's over to the two of you now to speak to this report, please.
John, Helen has her hand up.
So she does.
Hello, thank you, Linda. Sorry, Chairman. I need to just butt in because in my haste of me reading out all those names on the previous item and us agreeing, I do need a retrospective proposer and seconder, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's my fault as well. I should have made sure of that before we went to the vote. So that's my fault as well.
You're usually very good at spotting my mistakes when I don't stick to the proper protocols.
So can we just have a proposer then, please? If I can hand over to you, Chairman, to get the proposer and seconder. Thank you.
So just to be sure, this is the agreement we come to already on accepting the recommendations of Graham's budget report. Yeah. Page 6 of that paper. We didn't have a formal proposer and a formal seconder, so I just need to know if there's anyone who's willing to propose what we've already agreed. Councillor Thompson was first with their hand up that I could see.
I'm happy to propose, Chairman.
Is anyone happy to second?
I'm happy to second, John.
I don't know who that was, but
Anna
I saw.
Corbett.
Oh, Anna, thank you very much. I can only see 4 people at once. I noticed that Katie had put her hand up as well, so let's assume that she was a reserve if we needed it. Anyway, thank you for those 2 names. We can now have a clean sheet as far as our procedure is concerned, and I'm going to hand over to Linda and Clifflin to talk about the development plan.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to see so many of you here. I'm assuming and guessing and hoping that you've all read the recommendations and the action plan as it has been set out. If there are any issues or any points as Linda goes through the report, if you could then raise your hand and we'll try and address them as we're going through. And of course, we hope that the recommendations will be adopted by you at the end by the normal procedure. So with Linda and I going to in tandem, we'll go through any questions or any points that you'd like to raise.
Thank you. Thanks, Cliffy. Thank you, John, for saying goodbye to me in a way. Thanks to everybody for my time on SACRE. I've enjoyed it. I'm not going to dwell on that, but just to say I hope to continue working with you in one way or another. The strands that we're looking at are the strands of the CPD programme. This is page 3 now, and if you have no questions on page 2, which we think is self-explanatory, we'll move straight onto page 3. So I'll just pause to see if anybody has any questions about page 2. No? Happy? Right, thank you very much. So we'll move on just to talk about how these different strands of the CPD programme have been developing. This is the part of the action plan we're really focused on this year until the end of March. The extended CPD package was approved in the last SACRE meeting and is now finalised and has been going well. The CPD programme is chargeable to schools and RE Today runs it all. So if there's anything anybody has experienced on that programme that they'd like to draw SACRE's attention to, perhaps as one of the teachers, I guess we're allowed to do that verbally at the meeting, but the reports we've had have been very positive. Cliffy, is there anything you'd like to say on that?
I'd just like to say that I've attended those that have been run already due to, me just being there, so people have a face they can put a name to. And just to say that I've had very positive report backs from teachers that have been in contact with me about the online webinars. And also to let you know that RE Today are sending over to me those people that have attended. So by the end of all the training, I will be able to put together a log of who has attended the training and what schools still need to be trained for SACRE.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
So in invitation to anyone to ask any questions of Cliffy and Linda about this. I attended one of the sessions, or at least not the whole of it, but a good part of it myself, and I really enjoyed that. So I can tell you how good it was. Loveday, you have a question.
Yeah, it was just really what happens after March for those schools that haven't registered.
Most schools have already registered and they will be invoiced by RE Today. So luckily we don't have to worry about that, but all schools that have received the information and all schools have registered for them, and that's it now, if you know what I mean. So whether they had an agreement with RE Today to pay before the end of the financial year or not, I don't know.
So you're saying that all schools will have had training by March, or will have booked for training by March?
They will have been booked for training, all the schools that have taken up the invitation to book. That's why I've asked for a register, so that I can see at the end of it all which schools have not taken us up on the extra training.
Yeah, so it was those schools that haven't taken it up that I was wondering what the provision was for in the future.
That is something, because it will be in the next financial year, it will have to be something that will have to be discussed afterwards.
Thank you. Can I just ask, Linda, were you at one of the teacher events? This is Linda Saunders.
No, I haven't been to one of the teacher events yet.
Oh, I thought there was somebody else.
Me. Yeah, I'm going to one tomorrow.
Oh, going tomorrow. Yes, I thought you expressed an interest. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going tomorrow. So looking forward.
Oh, good. Good.
Yes. Just a reminder that places were made free to SACRE members, weren't they, John?
They were indeed.
So that's good. Thank you. Sorry, John, I'm stepping into my chair role. I shouldn't be doing this.
You carry on. You carry on. No, you carry on.
So many hats. Okay, so that's Strand A. If there aren't any more questions on that, I think Strand B speaks for itself. I don't know if anybody's got any more questions about the launch and how it went. We do know that it would be good to follow up with schools in a real-time event in the summer term, as people have been talking about earlier, and indeed to see how it's been going so far. But as far as we're concerned, in terms of our report and action plan, we have actually completed the launch of the agreed syllabus.
I think that's a matter of congratulation under the current circumstances.
Yes. Yeah. And may I carry on, John, with Strand C?
Yes, please. Yeah.
This is going to be back over to Cliffy just to talk about the Understanding Christianity programme. Cliffy, are you still there?
You're muted, Cliffy.
As far as I'm aware, everything's going well, and I've had feedback from quite a few teachers that have been on it at how wonderful it is. And again, I'd just like to raise the point that our very own Felicity and Nikki Benella have been doing the training themselves, which has been very good, and all the feedback I've had has been brilliant. Felicity, is there something you'd like to add?
No, we were practically full for the first course, so we had 29 out of 30, and the second course we're running, so we've got 2 courses of 3 sessions each. So the second course we're starting with the first session tomorrow, and so we're 24 out of 30. So I think that's really good, and a majority are community schools, and which is the target, the area we needed to aim for. And it seems to be working very well, these virtual Zoom sessions as well.
Good.
Thank you. I think Anna's got her hand up.
Yes, hello, thank you. Just in light of that, I wondered, and it may be that the stats haven't been collated yet, what sort of uptake is there from maths, particularly larger maths in this?
Does anybody know the answer to that?
Do you mean understanding Christianity, Anna?
I just mean the training generally. You mentioned community schools. Are they? I'm understanding that to mean schools that are in effect still standalone and not part of MATS. Is there a division? I think is what I'm getting at, between those that are in MATS and therefore maybe doing something different and non-MATS schools.
And I see that Felicity and Katie have got their hand up as well here.
Yeah, just the funding can relate to maths as well. So we do have some large number of teachers from the maths that are attending the Understanding Christianity. So it's not just for standalone community schools, it's for any school that's a community school, whether they belong to a MAT.
And they are coming, that's my point.
They are, yes.
I knew it was available, it was the fact that they are attending. Thank you, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to add to that, Anna, absolutely that, and it's been brilliant to see that through the relationships that we have, obviously with trusts where we have, maybe one church school, but then they're actually in a trust with 27 community schools. It's been really effective at kind of going, look, guys, look at this. They come and do this, and actually that's been very effective. So it was a real joy to see the number of community schools that took up that offer, and the feedback, as you say, that we've had has been really positive. So really grateful for Felicity and Nikki, who've done a fantastic job, and for all the support that's gone into that. So thank you all.
That's fantastic. I'm really pleased to hear that, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your question, Anna. And Linda, if I could just make a little observation here, just for the information of members of SACRE, that there is a proposal nationally to bring out an Understanding Islam course. That would also, I think, be very useful to our teachers in school. We're a long way from getting it done yet, but at least I thought members of SACRE would like to know that there are people working on an Understanding Islam course as well. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, John.
I see Anna's hand up again, so I do beg your pardon, Linda.
Just very quickly, if that is the case, then I think that's absolutely fantastic news, and I think that's something that should definitely come back to SACRE, something that we should very much support. And perhaps John, Linda, it won't be you, Linda, but John, you could perhaps keep us updated as appropriate, and we can feed that into the budget and everything else as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wondered if anybody wished to comment or question the uptake of the course on Understanding Christianity in the secondary sector, or if there's anything anybody wanted to say on that. If not, I'll move on to Strand D.
I can do. It's David. Cliffy and I and Greg, Mike have worked very hard, keeping the profile high. It has been difficult to get secondary schools out. Do bear in mind, of course, there are 250 primary schools and there's 30 secondary schools. Yeah. So the pool upon which to draw is very different, of course. Yeah. But nevertheless, we will keep going so that we can get there. Because, yes, it's disappointing that the numbers were too low to run economically at the moment, but that doesn't mean to say it won't happen in the future.
That's right.
Thank you for that comment, David. I'm sorry, Linda, I'm doing your job for you now, but I see Liz Folks has a hand up as well, and then Anna too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm part of a multi-academy trust, and we've attended some of the Understanding Christianity through the Salisbury Diocese back in November. So yeah, I think there was about 3 of us that did that. So just to let you know that it is happening.
It's a very good point, Liz, which I've forgotten, so thank you for that. Because yes, when I've inquired, a couple of trusts have said we've done it through different dioceses because of links we have and offers that have come down. So we'll need Cliffy to somehow assimilate that sort of data into the county data, because just because schools aren't registering with the current offer doesn't mean to say that they haven't managed to access training elsewhere. But no, thank you, Liz, I've forgotten that.
Thank you then. Linda, back to you again.
Thank you. So moving on to Strand D, which is the curriculum Canuic part of our action plan, specifically, of course, to do with the religious education components of CK. CK for RE is what we ended up calling it when we were on the working group with the teachers, and that seems to have stuck in many schools. That really, just to point out to you in the report, this strand is the biggest of all of them and covers 2.8 down to 2.14. So there are lots of points in there that you might want to ask about or for us to update you on. But just to say that Clifford and I have been working with the other curriculum consultants with Graham and have started a conversation there about how RE links with the rest of the Cornish dimension of the curriculum, although it's not going to be called quite that in the future, as far as I know. So if you've got any questions around any of those paragraphs, 2.8 to 2.14, we'd be very happy to take them. The main point to emphasise is 2.14, of course, which is that the rest of the CK work for schools is advisory, but the RE dimension is a legal requirement for the schools using the 2021 agreed syllabus. So the RE units have been written to fit in, of course, with the RE Today programme. And they may not have been written that way if they were going to be written for use with the rest of the curriculum Canuic, but that's what we're working with at the moment. Okay, there are points in there that do need explaining, but it might be best, John, for you to take questions.
Thank you very much, Linda. Now, I did see somebody's hand up, but it's disappeared. So a chance to ask any questions of Linda or Cliffy about curriculum Canuic development. I don't know whether Graham or Loveday have any comments they wish to make on this, because I know you've been particularly involved with that. I see no hands up. Oh yes, Graham, please.
I was putting my hand up to say that I didn't particularly have any comments, but
that's fine then.
There is ongoing work, and I think one of the key issues here is making sure that schools are delivering these RE units, and we need to push. That's one of the reasons why when I was talking earlier, I said that we were going to build a more explicit monitoring role into our school effectiveness work. I have 3 consultants that work for me on curriculum full time. They're new, they're just 6 months into their posts. They're working with me on the wider Cornish curriculum, which is across all subjects. And we are going to be pushing hard on making sure that schools are delivering these units in RE.
Thank you very much, Graham. Yes, very important to monitor here. Now, Loveday, you do have a hand up. I guess you would make a comment.
It was really more of a question than a comment, which was about the wider curriculum Canuic. And I note that something is being launched on St. Piran's Day, which is this Friday. So how does that work with the RE curriculum Canuic? And maybe it's a bit confusing that it's all called curriculum Canuic, and maybe we need something separate for the RE. Maybe we need RE Canuic or something rather than curriculum Canuic RE, because there are, as I understand it, other modules or other units that are going to be in that wider curriculum Canuic. Is that right, Graham?
Yes. So we've got a number of different irons in the fire at the moment. The St. Piran's Day launch is a call out to schools to submit what they're already doing, so that we can audit and get a sense of what's already going on. For example, I know there are schools in St. Austell Bay area that do very good units on the clay industry in primary school. We want to collect those examples together and see what there is, and then we're going to do a matrix and cross-reference all of that, and then look at what we can develop further to enhance that aspect of the curriculum. We've got some good talks going on with PE and Active Cornwall and people like that. I think David's just alluded to that in the comments box, David Barton there. And we also have already written 12 pages of amendments to the Brook PSHE curriculum, which was commissioned recently, which had absolutely no Cornish context whatsoever in it. And as soon as we get hold of the units of work, we'll be rewriting those and getting a distinctive Cornish aspect in right through from year 1 to year 13 in that PSHE curriculum. It's going to be a slow process, but we're making progress, we're making strides, and I think you're quite right. Possibly the nomenclature needs to change. I think it's has been confusing, the CK used in the RE context and used in the wider curriculum context, but there are other things happening at a education service and Together for Families directorate level with regards to what's called a belonging agenda that Kate is pushing Evan Hughes is pushing quite hard at the moment. That's not, I don't think that's been formally adopted as yet as kind of official policy, but there are position documents going around, and this work is part of that. It's the cultural inclusion aspect of the belonging agenda, particularly the Cornish national minority status, and embedding that in the curriculum, so that children growing up in Cornwall have a sense of who they are and where they're going in the world.
I think it reminds me of Sense of Place from way back.
Yeah.
I've just posted in the chat just to publicise to everyone. I posted in the chat a link to a bilingual audio visual on the story of St Piran, which if anyone can get that out to any schools for them to use, it's freely available for them to use in Cornish and English with lovely illustrations. So feel free to circulate that if possible.
Thank you very much indeed for those comments.
Sorry, David.
Back to you, Linda.
Okay, John, there is one point that Clifton and I would just like to draw attention to in 2.12. The RE units are on School Messenger on the website, and we hope, maybe this is a matter for the local authority and not for SACRE, I'm not sure, but it would be good if we could actually download those ourselves as consultants and then email them on to schools, because some schools really struggle with School Messenger, and although the units are actually published in the hard copy of the syllabus, many of them do want to use it online and to have the electronic copies.
Yes.
So although the answer is we'll go back to School Messenger and get it yourself, that seems a bit kind of churlish. So, since it is Cornwall Council's copyright, I'm sure we would be permitted to just forward it on.
Well, I would like to think so. It seems to me a very sensible thing to do.
Yeah, thank you.
So would you like to continue through the report for us now then?
Sophie, is there anything else on Curriculum Canuic that you would like to say?
No, just the only thing is 2.13, Graham, this is back to you. We haven't spoken to the hub leaders yet. They haven't been consulted about doing pilot work.
Yeah, that's something we have. Yes, Cliffy, I think this is something for, is it for Graham or not? We've sent the names of the hub leaders schools. Some of them are on SACRE, so they're here amongst us. We have sent those on to Graham, so hopefully those schools can be involved in piloting, and maybe they will be able to help. Well, it's a bit late now for the 5th of March, but 5th
of March work is done.
Yeah.
Sorry? Give you my name.
Yeah. Okay, Graham, thanks.
Yeah. Just to answer that question, consultation hasn't happened. No, not yet.
Okay, but I'm sure they'd be in a good position to bring their expertise to that team of consultants. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to move on to Strand D if there are no further questions. There is a hand up somewhere, but I'm afraid I don't know who it is, John, because of my.
I can't see any hand. I can't see any hands up now.
Right. Okay.
So carry on.
That's all right. That's fine. Just see. Strand D. Then we move on to the item which includes Rita. Rita, are you still here? I hope so. Because
Yes, I am.
yeah, great. This actually is for Rita to speak to first, and then we might all join in as we go through it. But thank you so much, Rita, for your contributions with the Cornwall Faith Forum to RE this year. Can I hand over to you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Linda. Thank you very much for all your hard work. And sadly, you're leaving us as a consultant. I just want to say thank you to all SACRE members for their support. It says in the report, the Holocaust Education Project is a partnership between Falmouth University, Cornwall Faith Forum and Cornwall. And I would, before I continue about what's happening presently, I would like to just ask our chair if he could say something about, because the first two animations that were done by students, second-year students from Falmouth University, were shown at the Holocaust Memorial event on the 24th of January. And Chair, could you say something about the animations you've seen?
Yes, thank you very much, Rita. Yes, I did attend the Holocaust Memorial Day event, whenever it was, and there were the two animations made by the students at Falmouth, which were really interesting and stimulating and thought-provoking. I tried, in order to prepare for this afternoon, to see if I could find them and watch them again, but I couldn't find them anywhere online. I imagine they're not available yet. So you're relying on my memory of them, and that was what seems to me to be a long time ago. A lot has been in and out of my head since then, but they were very original. I was a bit worried before I saw them that they would be too narrow in their scope. But they weren't at all. I was a bit worried they would be too in your face in terms of Holocaust in Second World War terms. But they were not like that at all. I think the young people had done really well in thinking through what the issues were and making them issues that could apply to any time and any place and any culture and any political situation. And so I thought they were very clever animations that made me think and would make any other person looking at them think as well. So my memory of them was that they were extremely good.
Thank you very much, John, for explaining that. It has been a very journey of privilege to work with the students, because it's been an emotional journey for them to learn about the Holocaust and then to work on Cynthia's story. But the power of personal story is amazing. And the focus of these stories is on compassion. And I think that's why they work so well. Now, what we're doing at the moment, Falmouth University is very interested in working with personal stories. And at the moment they're discussing with them whether they can take the whole school education path under their wing. This would be really good, because that means that the quality of it will be very good. So we will be looking for more personal stories we see from Cornwall. So it will work on their research strand, which is called Inequality in Storytelling, and also local voices. Now I'd like to ask you for some advice, if I may, faculty members. The first question is really related to the Holocaust Education Pack, because we all realize that teachers are under enormous pressure, and particularly because they have to bring their pupils back in over the next few weeks. But because the next thing we really need, we've got animation, we've got supporting materials, we've got interviews with the students, and we're going to make more animations. At least students will make more animations, but we need really to work with teachers to work out, is what we're doing relevant? How are we writing lesson plans? Is the supporting material good enough? All these kind of questions in order to make good enough quality to send to secondary schools in Cornwall. So can I just ask the teachers today, how best can we engage teachers at the present time, given the difficulties we find ourselves in?
So teachers, a question for those of you who are teachers in our schools, not an easy question to answer, possibly because of the state of flux that you are all in.
especially with schools reopening again next Monday. But if any of you could give Rita some kind of indication, that would be very valuable.
If whilst Greg and Mike and others and Liz are collecting their thoughts, there's a long-standing relationship between secondary schools' history departments and Tor Point Community School, who are University of College London Beacon Education as regards the Holocaust Education Foundation is concerned. So that's a long-standing relationship. I think they've been a beacon school over at Tor Point for about 5 years now. So there's a lot of work gone on over those years through the history departments, which may or may not help and support or potentially hinder the engagement with the RE side of things. But I put Charlotte over at Tor Point in touch with Rita some 5-6 months ago when both of them happened to email me regarding the same sort of topic, if you like. But
thank you very much indeed, David, for that. And clearly your idea worked. We've now got 3 hands up, from Liz, and then from Pete, and then from Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what David said, really, which is that I think a lot of Holocaust education now is actually taught through the history curriculum, isn't it? Because there is probably not very articulately put here, but my understanding is that Judaism wishes to represent itself as a living faith and not necessarily through always reference to the Holocaust. But I'm not saying that there isn't a place to do that in RE. Of course there is, but I'm just saying, in my experience, it seems to be that in a lot of schools it's covered through history. But I might be speaking out of turn. That might not be the experience that other colleagues have. So anyway,
thank you, Liz. Thank you, Pete.
Hi, yes, I just wondered, it's a question for Rita and the teachers really, about whether the Holocaust should be taught across both history and faith lessons, almost as one lesson, because was the Holocaust about race or religion? And that's what I'd ask, whether the teaching of it should involve both history teachers and religious teachers.
Thank you, Pete. Mike.
You don't want it taught as a...
I think what the other speakers have said is right. I think Holocaust does tend to be taught primarily through the history curriculum. However, one of the other things I do is I'm the subject mentor for the Cornwall skit, and we work quite a lot with the Holocaust Memorial Trust, where we get both PGC students from the history course, the RE course, and the geography course, so they're all humanities teachers, and we have a couple of days training for them every year as part of their PGC training. The Holocaust Memorial Trust provides some really superb lessons for not just history and other humanities subjects, but really tied into RE. And I think maybe, Linda, we could look at them, and because they've already got some brilliant resources. I think we could just tailor them slightly to make them a bit more suitable maybe for our students down here in Cornwall. But I don't think there's any need to sort of reinvent the wheel, because they're such a brilliant organisation. They've been doing it for so long. As I say, the resources are amazing. So we can use them, I think. I think that's something we could probably look at in a later date.
Thank you, Mike and Greg.
Oh yeah, sorry, I just want to sort of echo what some people have already said, really. I know we work quite closely with the history department in our school, and the Holocaust is the only compulsory unit of what history has to teach. So I think there is a place where that would be a good pitch, but equally I'd agree with the other comment that I think there is a place for it in RE. And I know there are schools that do the Holocaust as units of work, but certainly I know if you want a sort of a broader scope, if you like, history departments have to teach it. So you would kind of do well to kind of look at that, really.
Thank you very much, Greg. Rita, you've heard some responses. I don't know whether you have like to carry on with your
John, can I chip in? Sorry, it's Elizabeth.
Oh yes, Elizabeth. Yes.
Sorry, I did put my hand up. Sorry, I was just going to say that I did try some of these units last year, last academic year, and actually, when it comes to questions of suffering and the problem of evil, I kind of covered the Holocaust there, because I thought I did, particularly things like Maximilian Kolbe, and I just thought that was an afterthought, actually, just because I don't want it to come across as negative, like we just don't cover it at all. Okay.
No, thank you for that. I think that's a good point to make, Elizabeth, and I certainly did it in the context of the problem of evil and suffering when I was teaching, but then that was 3 centuries ago now. So, Rita, would you like to pick up from that?
Yes. Can I just thank everyone for their responses? I think it's very useful, Greg, to get in touch with the history department. David, I did get in touch with Charlotte Lane, who was very enthusiastic and lovely, but then I never heard anything from her. And then I kept, I need to read.
Right. Yes, I'll support you on that. She's been quite poorly, actually, but I'm not exactly sure of the timing.
I was worried about that.
I think she is back in work now, but we'll keep going between this as a pincer movement, Rita.
Very much, David. That would be very helpful. I think that I can start working, and also Mike, the Holocaust Memorial Trust is amazing, and the material is fantastic, and we're working with them as well. But it would just be good to be able to trial some of the animation. The animations are only 90 seconds, and they seem to be a very good way of engaging pupils with Holocaust, but also with other genocides and much more things that are happening in present days. I just want to ask one other question, if I may, Chair, which is to do with, given that Cornwall University is much more interested in working with us on stories, will go beyond the Holocaust, local voices and much more in the present day time. So can we maybe have a short discussion about how the Faith Forum can help, support SACRE? How can we what can we do? What difference can we make? What would be good for us to do? And I think Linda is raising her hand.
Linda, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't raise the electronic hand. Yes, Rita, I sent a message out to some of us this week asking those questions, and can I just reflect on this in broader terms before asking perhaps if anybody else wants to add anything. But to me, the Faith Forum contributes to SACRE in so many different ways that sometimes we don't see it. But in terms of the next 3 years, Rita, I would see that events for SACRE members to reintroduce them to the Cornwall Faith Forum might be really helpful. Some informed points of discussion at SACRE meetings like you're trying to do today, but I know we're not going to have time, so there's that sort of tension always. Maybe to have some special events where SACRE members can join in. I think it's important also that the Cornwall Faith Forum always feels free through SACRE groups particularly to challenge constructively any content and processes of the agreed syllabus, and particularly curriculum CNUIC for RE, the CK for RE section. Is that what you wanted me to sort of talk about now? I'm sorry, I'm looking at another screen, so I'm going to have to come back to you.
I can't hear any what Rita was saying, but I noticed that Liz has her hand up as well.
Yeah, sorry, me again. I was just going to say that I used a speaker through the Cornwall Faith Forum up in Lou, where I am. I've forgotten her name, which is really embarrassing, but a Muslim lady, and she's been invaluable coming into school. And to echo what Linda said, she often, because she's speaking about a real faith, she often tells the students how it really is, and not sort of the textbook version that we get, for GCSE. So yeah, they really enjoy her coming in, and that was all arranged through Cornwall Faith Forum, and that was really, really helpful. So,
thank you, Liz. That's a really important point to make, because there's a lot of discussion, isn't there, nationally as well as locally, I think, about the importance of RE helping children to understand religion as a lived experience of people, not just ideal systems that they learn from textbooks. And the Faith Forum, I think, is one great resource that we have available locally to help us with that aspect of RE. And it really gives me a chance to say that I think the more we explore the notion of religion and worldviews, the more opportunity there is for us to tap into the views and experiences of people in our own communities. And I'd therefore like to see, personally, a greater set of a greater cooperation between the SACRE and the Faith Forum, particularly because the SACRE is very constrained by its constitution and by its operating as a council committee. There must be many opportunities where the Faith Forum, which is not so constrained, could provide for us and the people we work with in schools opportunities for activities and so on that don't come within the SACRE narrower channel. And so I'd like us to explore this idea of the Faith Forum and SACRE working together a bit more creatively in years to come. Sorry, that was rather longer than I intended, but anyone want to pick up on that, that's fine. I see, Linda, your hand is still up, so please.
It's probably an accident, but I'll carry on if you like. That's fine, thank you, John. Just going back to what I was saying about the accurate representations of spiritualities and worldviews in Cornwall, and Liz's point as well was just on that. It's really important to celebrate, I suppose, to make those connections with the Faith Forum about things where we might need support materials for teachers, not just visitors to classrooms, but also support materials that will help with the actual curriculum. And also there are always opportunities to go for national awards like the SACRE West Hill Awards, which are actually specifically about diversity at the moment. So perhaps the Faith Forum can help teachers take a lead on that kind of project so that Cornwall might be seen nationally for what it already does brilliantly, which is to celebrate the spiritualities of the people that are here. I've spoken enough, John, so I'll stop there and leave you to carry on.
Thank you very much indeed. That was all Strand E of the action plan.
Yes.
And that's the item that we're on in our agenda. Is there anyone else who wants to talk about Strand E before I invite Linda to move on to Strand F? Rita, are you happy for us to continue this conversation about the Faith Forum and the SACRE? It's not something we're going to come to a quick decision to now, but are you happy for us to continue that line of thinking?
Yes, and I'm really pleased with all the responses. And I think Linda's given us a good list to work with, and I'm sure that the people who are here, like Durit and Eve, have heard this as well. And the lady, Liz was talking about the Sister Iqbal, who does speak. So he's great. No, thank you very much. I think there's lots to think about and lots to move on with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, at the risk, I'm going to put my hand. I found the button. I can put my hand down. Okay. Do you want me to continue, John? Strand F. Of course, this is slightly hanging in the air, particularly after Graham's budget report. But we feel that this is a new strand that SACRE might need to be speaking about either at this meeting or the next one in terms of in-school or face-to-face support to assist with the monitoring and evaluation of the agreed syllabus, which Graham has already mentioned. And that perhaps we might be able to use the extra Dialston Board of Finance budget from LCLRE to support with this in the future. Cliffy, I haven't drawn you into the conversation for a while.
That's okay.
You've been at recent LTLRE steering group meetings and things, haven't you? The Learn, Teach, Lead RE group.
Yes.
There is a little bit of, not tension, but a little bit of concern about leaving it there too much longer. So we do need to be thinking about how we best use that budget, which after all has been sitting there now for some time. So I'll just leave Strand F hanging in the air for you. I won't be there at the next meeting to discuss it, I guess. But Cliffy, is there anything you'd like to say about it?
Yeah, I just think it's imperative now that we have this new agreed syllabus that there's some way that we can evaluate and monitor how it's been used and what the engagement is from schools. And I think so. Therefore, I would really like to recommend that Strand F stay as permanently on the action plan as a permanent thing, because after all, that is what SACRE really is doing, because we are there to support the schools. And I think that Strand F is very important, that the schools know that they are being supported. So yes, we'll need to maybe think about approaching the Diocese of Exeter and asking them to send the money down. I don't know how that all happens or whatever. And I know that Exeter have been asking me, when are we going to be requesting the money? Because I think it's an anomaly in their books, if you know what I mean.
Thank you very much, both of you, for that. Yes, it is an anomalous situation, and it's not intended to be a permanent one. What we need to do is to have a specific purpose to draw it down for. And I think it is incredibly important that SACRE does have the means of monitoring and supporting what's going on in schools. And if this money could help us with that, then clearly it's one way forward. And I would like to suggest that when we put the action plan together for 2021-22, when we know what the budget is from the local authority, we can take the LTLRE money into account as well and plan some activities that will cover all the strands of the action plan, including Strand F. It's interesting, I was going to save this until we had the Southwest SACRE's conference agenda item, which is the next one. But one of the issues which came up at the Dillington House conference yesterday was the capacity of SACRE's to have contact with schools and work with schools, finding out what's happening in the schools. And in many cases, we don't know what's happening in schools. And this was a common concern with SACRE's across the Southwest. So I think this is something to pay particular attention to in the year to come. I'd like us then to move to the recommendations, which are on page 1 of that report from Cliffy and Linda. There are 4 recommendations there, and what I'd like to do is to take them all en bloc in the way in which we've been voting so far. I think they cover everything that's in the report, and unless there's somebody who's got a particular issue or important thing to raise, Felicity, I'll come to you, and then we'll move on to the voting after that, if we may. Felicity first. And Mike after that. Can you make your point, Felicity? I don't hear Felicity's voice. I'm not sure if Felicity is still with us. I expect she is.
Sorry,
I can't hear her.
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I needed to unmute myself. Strand D, and it's just that I did to declare an interest, even though this was looked at and passed at the last meeting. And Strand D, formal curriculum Canoic, the Cornish dimension of RE, it was agreed at the last SACRE meeting that an honorarium would be paid to each hub leader.
Oh yes, yes. So you're declaring an interest in that particular,
yes, in that particular
part of the action plan. Yeah. Mike?
And I'm just doing the same. Right at the beginning, I didn't declare an interest, and then when I've seen Strand D, then obviously I am now declaring an interest in that.
Thank you for that, Mike and Felicity and Greg.
Yeah, same for me.
Right, so the 3 of you are declaring an interest in Strand D. I'm very pleased that you're interested in Strand D, the curriculum Canoic implementation, and thank you for what you are doing to help it along. I'm not sure that actually disqualifies you from voting in terms of the recommendations, because the promotion of curriculum Canoic is something which is a policy of SACRE rather than an individual. but I'll have to leave it to you to decide whether you're going to abstain or not when we come to the recommendations. I'd like to think that there are so many there that you could support that you would be favourable to them. So, Helen, would you mind, have I missed somebody else out? Yes, Mike, your hand is up still. Is that just left over from before?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So, Helen, would you like to take us through the voting for the recommendations on page 1?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, can we have, first of all, then, a proposer and a seconder before we go to the vote, please? Is there anybody that wishes?
Loveday? I'll propose it.
Thank you. Seconder, please. I'm sure Loveday's not.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much, Mike. So we have Loveday and Mike proposing and seconding, Helen.
Thank you, Chairman. So going to the recommendations on page 1 of the supplementary agenda pack, and starting off with Group A, Linda Sanders.
4.
Thank you. Patrick Buckley.
4.
Thank you. Elizabeth Folkes-Matson.
No.
I think Liz has left because she had a staff meeting.
Right, okay, thank you. And John Keast.
4.
Thank you. Dr. Rafai.
4.
Thank you. And Maggie Thompson.
4.
Thank you. Sandy Easterbrook.
4.
Thank you. And Eve Salthouse.
4.
So that's Group A, all in favour. And Group B, Anna Corbett.
4.
Thank you. Katie Fitzsimmons.
She's left. She had to be elsewhere.
Okay. And Felicity Henchley.
4.
Thank you. That's Group B, all agreed. And Group C, David Barton.
4.
Thank you. Teresa Mills.
4.
Thank you. Greg Parrock.
4.
And Mike Heron.
4.
Thank you. That's all agreed. And Group D, Councillor Jenkin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Thank you. That's Group D, all agreed. So that's all carried, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, everybody. And a thank you to Cliffy and Linda for such a comprehensive report on the SACRE action plan. There's a lot of things going on, and it's not been an easy time in which to make anything go on. It's through you, I'd like to thank all the hub leaders and those who've been working with you to get our RE show on the road more than it was before, and to have done that during a pandemic when schools are closed for the majority of pupils, I think is no great feat of achievement. So thank you very much indeed. And again, thanks to you, Linda, for your work as a consultant for us.
Thank you, John.
And Cliffy too, because her term of office comes to an end and we'll have to wait and see what happens next. That brings us to item 8, and that's a verbal update on the Southwest SACRE's report, a conference rather, that took place yesterday afternoon in Dillington. Well, I was going to say it did in Dillington House. It didn't take place in Dillington House at all. That's where it would have been if we'd all gone somewhere. But of course, we were all sat at home and had a very successful Southwest SACRE's conference in our chairs. And one of the speakers, indeed the keynote speaker for the conference, Farid Panjwani, was actually addressing us from Karachi. So it just goes to show how this technology can keep us connected in that amazing sort of way. He gave a very interesting keynote speech on decolonizing the curriculum from Karachi, which I'm not going to try to summarize now because it was quite complex and we haven't yet received his PowerPoint slides, but when we get them we can circulate them. But I found that a very interesting presentation, which went beyond the narrower confines of religious education to all sorts of cultural and geopolitical issues too. There were two other workshops. One was about, well, there were three workshops, but I only had the opportunity to attend two. And I attended a workshop on the future of SACREs and local area networks as they are described in the Commission on RE report from 2 years ago. And we had a very stimulating discussion about the strengths of SACREs and what we feel are the issues with SACREs. And Claire Clinton, who led that workshop, gave us a kind of multiple choice set of questions where we had to say what we thought was the greatest issue of SACREs. And it was almost unanimous that one of the biggest issues that SACRE faces is having the reduced contact with schools nowadays compared with how SACREs used to be able to interact with schools some years ago. Then there were other issues to do with the capacity of SACREs and their funding and getting people interested enough to serve on the SACRE. I'm very pleased to say that in Cornwall we have a very good bunch of you who are interested in serving on SACRE. But that was a workshop about how we might build on the strengths of SACREs and go forward, perhaps working with other interested groups. In our case, the Cornwall Faith Forum is an obvious example. And then there was another workshop on the training of teachers of religious education, primary teachers. Amazing to think that at the University of Exeter, where they train primary teachers on the PGCE course, the RE person has got 4 hours to train a primary teacher on teaching RE, just 4 hours. And she was describing how the notion of worldviews is a very helpful notion in getting trainee teachers who have no religious background at all to engage with what religion, philosophy, worldviews, how we see the world, engaging them in that kind of discussion. And it really builds their confidence in taking on the teaching of RE when they become teachers in schools themselves. So it was a very interesting workshop. Again, I can't summarize it more concisely than that because there was quite a lot of philosophical content about the nature of worldviews in that workshop. But I don't think I was the only member of the Cornwall SACRE there. I think Linda Sanders, you were there as well, if I remember rightly.
Yes, I was there. Well, I was there for some of it, but I also went to the Worldview one. Found it fascinating how the teachers, but also the lack of time that they have to train. So true. Yeah, I was interested because I'd never been to anything like that before. It was my experience of what SACRE is about. So yeah, so it was interesting. I'm looking forward to getting notes actually of the other seminars that there were. So it was good. It's a good thing to go to.
I'm glad you had a positive experience of it, and it was well attended by people from across the southwest. I think there were well over 50 people there, probably because it was online and nobody had to spend hours and hours getting to the meeting. But anyway, when we get the presentations and so on, we'll make them available to you, and then you can see for yourselves what it was. If anybody's got any questions on that, please do ask, because that's the last item on our agenda. I don't see any hands up, but if you do wish to ask, please do so.
John?
Yes?
I think there's a hand up. It seems, yes, it's Linda, but I think I can see a hand up from Anna Corbett in the chat room. Anna.
Not intentionally. I struggle every time I have to put my hand up.
Me too.
Not intentionally.
Fine. So let's hope these Southwest SACRE conferences go on, because it's extremely good to have contact with our colleagues in Devon, Plymouth and other parts of the Southwest. And the fact that we now have an agreed syllabus, which is much in common with Plymouth, Devon and Torbay. That I think encourages contacts between us. Now, the last item of our agenda is any other business, and I've not been notified of any other business. So there isn't any formal any other business to go through. But I just want to say a couple of things. That we are working on the annual report, at least Linda has been working on the annual report, and we hope that that will come to us for our next meeting, covering 2 years because of the circumstances we've been living through. And we thank Linda in advance for finishing that text off for us. We've got our examination data in there, and we can talk about that next time. The date of the next meeting is finally to be confirmed, and Helen will do that as soon as possible. Whether it will be a face-to-face or a virtual meeting, it's a bit difficult to say at the moment. Also, I think Anna reminded us about refreshing our PREVENT training, and that's a very timely reminder. I think we're all aware that there was a case recently of a young man who had a Cornish connection and his extreme views, and therefore we need to get the PREVENT agenda refreshed in our minds. And just to remind you too that although Linda ceases to be our consultant, I hope she will still be active in our SACRE meetings one way or another. She remains the chair of the National Association of SACREs, so will still be very much a part of our local discussions, even though she has a national perspective. But her national perspective is indeed, I think, very helpful to us when we're dealing with those issues locally. So those are the little announcements that I wanted to add on to our agenda today. If there is anyone else who's got a kind of update of any kind or a final concluding remark to make, then please do so now, because I will bring the meeting to an end after that. I see no virtual hands going up. I can only see one person on the screen, so you might be waving wildly, but I can't see it, I'm afraid. You'd have to use your virtual hand if you wanted to draw your attention to yourself. So nobody's got their hand up, so let me then thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, for all the contribution. I think we're moving forward as a SACRE. There's good things going on, and there will be even greater things to come. Thank you all very much for your time and your commitment, and I wish you well for the rest of the day.
Thank you, John. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Very best. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.